Can you all hear me? Uh-oh. I know you can't see me, but this actually looks a little bit loud. No, it's okay. Can you guys hear me? Just give me a little note, a little something, and let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Before I start running my mouth. Yay! Okay, there's a little bit of a delay here between what you're seeing and what I am. Thank you, thank you. Veronica, hey! All right. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this all week. I've been wanting to do this for like weeks, but mutable madness. Like, let's just say that I'm a victim too. All right, so I've got a gazillion notes here. This is the 2019 Eclipse Guide. There's also a digital version, but this is the printed version. This is my copy here. So what I want to do is really talk about what this is for. I know that you can read it and look at it and kind of see, and there are instructions in here, but I'm using this too, and so in using this is my first time doing this guide, and in using this, I feel like it would be useful for me to offer you guys some guidance on how to make the best use of it, and then to add some information that I just didn't put in here, but has become clear that I need to add now. So that's what we're going to talk about first, the function and purpose of this guide, the layout. And then I want to make sure that you guys are filling this out properly and that you understand how to use it. I will be watching the chat window intermittently in order to see your questions. I'm going to try to make time at the end to take questions. So yeah, that's that on that. What else do I have here? Our tasks today. So right, first making sure that you filled this out correctly. I want to give you dates, right? When we talk about redefining truth in all four mutable signs, there are specific time periods that correlate with these signs and these themes. So we're going to talk about what those dates are. I'm going to give you dates, and we're going to talk about what it means, right? The most important thing is that Sagittarius is our reference point here. So we're going to talk about all of these in reference to Sagittarius. I want to spend a considerable amount of time talking about the Pisces phase, since that's the phase that we're in now. And hopefully I'll be able to come back and talk about some of these other phases. And then finally, we're going to talk about Jupiter, which has changed signs today. So I want to talk about what really is the difference between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And I think that this is going to be an interesting conversation for us to have, because people use words like passionate to define both of them, but that's one of those words that doesn't really mean anything to me, so I kind of throw it out the window, and I want to find the real way to articulate, you know, what does this transition back and forth between Jupiter and Scorpio and Jupiter and Sagittarius mean? You know how I feel. Words mean things. I love words, and so we always have to find the right ones to say what we really mean, but we have to know what we mean first, okay? So that's our agenda for today. I hope you've got your guides ready. So this is our cover, and just a little bit about the cover. I searched all over the place for an image that I thought would go with this, and I don't know, some kind of way intuitively I found this image of this chameleon, which obviously is like from one of those adult coloring books, but someone has digitally filled it in. I did purchase the image, so you know, I paid for it, but you know, this is really indicative of mutable madness. I mean, the whole point of a chameleon is that they change color in order to blend in with their environment, to be safe. And so mutable madness asks of us, what are the ways that we change and adapt, right? Based on new information and experiences. So it's really a biological thing for chameleons, and as we'll come to understand when we talk about the Pisces phase of this, it's biological for us too. It's not just intellectual or ideas. Yes, words do mean things, but why and where? So yeah, that's our cover. I do have a little bit about the Eclipse Guide here, but the most important thing for us to look at in that context is this page here. This gives us the dates of the eclipses. So just for reference point, we have one eclipse in 2018, which is a solar eclipse in Gemini on July 12th. And then we have 4 eclipses in mutable signs in 2019. That is a big deal. 4. That's not normal. We have 3 in Sagittarius. Again, that's a pretty big deal, because what has to happen is that we have to have a new or full moon close to a certain point, a certain proximity to a certain point. And just how and when and why it's close to that point, it's kind of, there's a math behind it, but it just doesn't always line up to that we have 3 in one sign in 1 year. So, and really, you know, as soon as we get to January, we'll have another one, January 2020. So the dates for the eclipses here, I have January 5th, 2019, a new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius. July 2nd, there's a new moon solar eclipse in Gemini, and the last 2 are in Sagittarius. July 16th, there's a full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, and December 26th is the big one, the big kahuna, and that is a solar eclipse in Sagittarius, day after Christmas. And I have some questions here that we won't go over now. But one note is that wherever you see walking away, you can also add running towards. I think that that really applies. So if I ask, what are you walking away from? Maybe you are running towards something and you're not necessarily walking away from something. Although implied in walking away is that you're running towards something, or implied in running towards something is that you're walking away from something. Okay. And then, of course, these are the dates for the eclipses in 2020, of which there are 3. Now we've had 5, there are 5 eclipses actually in 2019, but one of them was in Cancer. All right, so this is really important here. I really don't know that there is an explanation of what actually an eclipse and new moon is that isn't mired in like words like portal or vortex, or I don't know, some kind of fluffy pseudo-spiritual language. And you know, for me, I don't like fluffy pseudo-spiritual language, even though I'm doing something that is so metaphysical and intangible with tarot and dream interpretation and astrology. I want for things to have a practical implication. I want to bring them down to earth so that we can actually use them. So I'm just going to read this to you. What is a new moon? Okay, so I'm not going to go into the astrology of it. I'm just going to read here because, you know, I can go all the way around the block and come back and time will be up. Okay, a new moon highlights short-term focus in a particular area of your life. It's a monthly reset button. So we know that a new moon is centered around the sun cycle. And this is so important. Whenever we have a new or full moon, the story is not where the moon is. The story is where the sun is, and all the moon is doing is allowing us to perceive indirectly what is happening in the house where the sun is. Okay? Remember this. This is really important. All right? A full moon is a culmination of short-term stories and circumstances. It's a monthly dramatic high point, pressure valve, or release. So remember, oppositions are always telling us that we can't go too far in one direction, that we have to, basically when we go in one direction, we get pinged to the other direction, kind of like a slingshot, right? So this is why it's nice to have planet sextile or trine in opposition in your chart, because it keeps you from going bing, 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 right? Like the ping pong ball in a pinball machine. Now, a new moon solar eclipse. So again, we have a new moon. It's a new story, right? The sun is conjunct the moon, right? And one of the other things to understand about a lunation, as with aspects between any 2 planets, is that the conjunction means the 2 things are imperceptible as separate. And really, in order to see and understand something, to be conscious of it, you have to go like this. If something is standing right here next to me, or it's on my head or in my head, I can't see it. I can only see it when I come from this direction, right? So the moon allows us to see it from this direction when we get in opposition at a full moon. A new moon solar eclipse marks a definitive end as a person, place, or thing departs from your life or dramatically enters your life. A time to walk away from a completed phase or cycle can be sudden, but is often a logical conclusion after months or years of pressure building. Okay, so we see that inherent in new and full moons is this long story, right? And with eclipses, right, there is this major story ongoing happening in a particular house or set of houses in our chart. And these lunations are kind of peaks in that story or turning points. Um, Full moon lunar eclipse brings sudden clarity, reveals what was previously hidden or unknown. Aha moment. Provides information or involves circumstances that makes new moon solar eclipse departures logical or necessary. So, not a spoiler alert. If you watch the OA, there is a scene where the OA and this other character are walking down the hallway, passageway, and when they show the passageway from the OA's perspective, all you see is a series of lights, and you cannot tell where this pathway is ending. This is what lunar eclipses are like, right? The lights are coming on, and you can see, but you're not really sure where the door is, right? So, implied in that is that a pathway is taking you somewhere, right? So this eclipse story is taking you somewhere, or it's highlighting a narrative or path in your life. But when you get to that solar eclipse is when you get to the door and you open it. So you're leaving behind all that has happened in that passageway or where that passageway brought you from. And you open the door, close the door behind you. That's a solar eclipse, right? Solar eclipses are points of no return. You ain't going back, boo. It's over. Kind of like the death card. It's over, boo. All right. So with that being said, if you'll notice here, right, the colors are color coded here. We have 3 solar eclipses and 1 lunar eclipse. So okay, I'm back. Okay, hopefully this all comes together coherently. So I was talking about how there are 3 solar eclipses this year, which are different than lunar eclipses. Remember, like I said, lunar eclipses are turning on the light and making things clear for you, like, oh crap, that's what that is. Okay, but solar eclipses are the opportunity to open that door and walk through it, right? Looking back in your life, and this is what I tend to do when I do my eclipse reading special. When you look back at these important points where the eclipse degrees are triggered by other transits, where the eclipses are in a particular part of your chart, you will see that these were major turning points in a particular story. They're major turning points. So this is why it's important to track this, and this is what we use this eclipse guide for. All right. So on this next page, I actually just put this up on Twitter. On this next page, we have several columns here. These are our 4 mutable signs. These are the planets that rule each sign. These are the, I'm sorry, this is like a mirror image, so it's hard to see where I'm actually pointing. This is the elements of each sign here. And then this page here where you see intend, understand, speak here, that comes from this. Okay, we'll get in more to that. Then these are our general themes related to the planet, right? So for Jupiter and the Sagittarius eclipses and the Pisces portion of Mutable Madness, we have culture, religion, philosophy, cosmology, civilization. That word right there really hit me, and I hope that you get to read this particular article here when I talk about civilization as like a word that's thrown around in judgment with moral implications. Ethics, morality, teacher, mentor, clergy, judge, lawyer. Language, education, so we're down at Mercury now. Language, education, policy, and administration, curriculum, vocation, trade, profession, training, exam. Look at that. I said that in November. I put the word exam here, and sure enough, Gemini Moon a couple weeks ago, we had this whole scam breakout around parents paying people to take the ACT and SAT exam. Like, wow, I call that. Okay, books, mass media, social media, journalism, ritual, and ceremony. Those are Mercury words. Ritual and ceremony, right? You see the magician card, right? That is generally associated with the planet Mercury, but he has all the tools. He's the MC, the master of ceremony, meaning he knows the method and he has the tools to host the ceremony, right? And I'm talking about a religious ritual or ceremony. Okay, so now this column here, you're supposed to put the house numbers in, right? So that you really have like a, at a glance look, right, at the houses in your birth chart that are associated with these particular topics. So that brings us here. This page is the page where you paste your birth chart. And here's an important note. Thank you, Veronica. Here's an important note. You have to use whole sign houses. I know y'all love your Placidus and your whoever, whatever, but you have to use whole sign houses. With my 2019 Eclipse guide, as well as the Sidereal Astrology guide, it does not work with the quadrant house systems like Placidus and Porphyry and Koch and things like that. So you have to use whole sign houses. So one topic, one house. It makes your life easy. People want astrology to be complicated, but it's not. And I think my work has shown that astrology is absolutely not complicated at all. It's just the application that takes a while to learn. So once you have gone, right, it tells you here the instructions. You need your sidereal birth chart. Visit how to create your sidereal birth chart. The link is here. And follow the instructions. Again, we're using Lahiri, the Lahiri Ayanamsha. Don't ask why. That's what works. So we're using it. And make sure you use whole sign houses. Then you want to identify your mutable houses. So I couldn't, for some reason, get the screen share to work so that you can see the page that I had pulled up. So I'm going to try to pull this up on my iPad just so you can see, because I understand that some people may not really understand how to read a birth chart, but I don't want to leave y'all out. So let's see if I can, yeah, I don't know why anybody likes Placidus either. Okay, let me just show you here. So hold on, I have this set up a little bit different. Well, actually, it's okay. Right, so you can see here that this is my birth chart. See how, this is my birth chart here. And there's all of the Sagittarius and my Pisces moon, mutable madness. Yes, me too, boo. So it says here that you want to match the signs. So there's Virgo, right? And that's my 10th house. So that when I get to this page here, double fisting it right now. When I get to this page here at the bottom where it says Virgo, you see I have 10, right? Sagittarius is my first house. So here I have 1. Now, if you want to go and you want to like take some notes to interpret these houses, right? This is what I've done here. That's what this box is for. These boxes here. So Sagittarius is me, my personality, my body, actions I take, things that happen to me, right? My body, face, head, and mouth. So then I can even go back here and connect it to these topics. Like, this is me. Culture, religion, this me. Duh. All right. So, and then my 10th house, right, is Virgo. All of these things, what do I teach? I mean, I'm literally publishing, this is like Mutable Madness Inception. I'm literally publishing a guide to teach. Right? You see how literal astrology is? It's so straightforward. Okay, so as long as you've done that, you should be ready. Now, I want to move on to start giving you the dates for the different phases of Mutable Madness. So you can write them here. I personally have also written them in these boxes here so I can keep track. So we're starting with Pisces. The Pisces phase of mutable madness began February 24th. The very first planet to cross into Pisces was Mercury on February 24th. Um, the Pisces phase is going to end on May 10th. That's a really long time, right? But we're waiting for Venus to move through Pisces. So Venus doesn't even enter Pisces until, I want to say, April 12th or 11th. Venus enters Pisces. No, that's the 15th. Venus doesn't even enter Pisces to the 15th, right? And Mercury doesn't even go back into Pisces until the 11th, right? So basically April, which is why in the 2019 eclipse guide, I didn't really start talking about mutable madness until we got to the month of April, because Venus and Mercury moving through are very indicative of that. So those are the dates for that. The next phase is Gemini. And the Gemini phase, hold on, I got another page of notes here. The Gemini phase, see, I got it written down, phase begins May 6th with Mars entering Gemini. So we can really make something of what's the first planet to enter the sign, the mutable sign, kicking off that particular phase of mutable madness. So for Pisces, that was Mercury and this Mercury retrograde, right? I mean, doesn't it make sense? Then we have Gemini, May 6th through July 31st. May 6th, Mars enters Gemini, and then Mercury is the last to leave Gemini on July 31st because of the Mercury retrograde, right? So Mercury kicked off Pisces because it was ahead of the sun and all of the other planets, ready for its retrograde. And then because of the way the retrograde is situated this summer, it's the last planet to leave Gemini. All right, the Virgo phase begins September 9th and it ends November 10th. It begins September 9th with Venus entering Virgo. So look, everybody gets a chance. Mercury gets a chance, Mars gets a chance, Venus gets a chance. Look at that. Venus in Virgo, and Mars leaves Virgo November 10th. So everybody gets a chance to have the first opportunity to say something and to have the last opportunity to say something. So Mercury always is going to represent conversations and paperwork. Don't even get me started on that, Winter. She said Mars and Gemini just sounds like chaotic evil. We'll get to that, all right? But Mercury is always going to be conversations, right? We've seen this with this Mercury retrograde. Mercury's always going to represent conversations and paperwork, those kind of things. Venus is always going to represent relationships, but really the idea of reconciliation and negotiation, and what are the terms of that reconciliation and negotiation, meaning how are you going to, on the hierarchy, right? So if we're talking Pisces, right, reconciliation and negotiation is a means to Jupiter stuff, right? Experiencing meaning beyond the personal and the tangible. Okay, now the Sagittarius phase is real complicated because Saturn is in Sagittarius all year until January 23rd. So we can say that January 23rd marks a kind of end, but remember, by that point, Jupiter has been in Sagittarius for its permanent visit since November 4th. So, and then the other complicating piece is that Mars does not even enter Sagittarius until February of 2020. So it's like a chain link reaction that Saturn's going to leave Sagittarius at the beginning of 2020, but Jupiter has taken over, right? So we have a similar handing over of the baton in that our Sagittarius house is occupied nonstop from October 26, 2017 until Jupiter leaves Sagittarius in 2020, right? So if you recall, we had a similar thing happening with our Libra house, that our Libra house was occupied from September 2017 until January 2019, right? Because of the Venus retrograde. So we're going to leave off an ending there for the Sagittarius phase. Let's move on. I want to talk about the Pisces phase of this mutable madness. Thank you to Reed for sitting and brainstorming with me. We both have Sag rising with Pisces moon, so we have like a very intimate understanding of each other. And by often talking about our experiences, she helps me really find language to articulate a lot of what you're going to hear. We had a whole conversation about this on Sunday. So I've got notes everywhere. Let me just find where they're situated. That's one page. And then I didn't get a chance to print this out, so I've got some stuff I've typed up and some questions. I mentioned this yesterday on Periscope last night when I was giving my little sermon. And this is how I started this off. I'm just going to read it to you. You might want to write it down because I'm not going to do it to y'all. I was going to do it, but I'm not going to do it to y'all because there's too many y'all on here and y'all going to yell at me if I say what I'm trying to say. So I'm just not going to say it. Truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. I'm going to say that again. Truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. Okay? Truth is you and your perception and interpretation, meaning that it can change. Your truth can change based on changes in your perception. This is Sagittarius. This is Jupiter in Sagittarius. That your truth can change based on your perception, right? Now, I said here that Sagittarius is really the anchoring and cornerstone of mutable madness. And that's because, like I said before, since October 26th of 2017, all the way until Jupiter leaves Sagittarius in 2020, your Sagittarius house is occupied. And so everything can be interpreted in reference to this particular house in your birth chart. Now, for the record, 2020 brings Capricorn back. I know that's not used a lot of you guys want to hear, but it's just the facts, okay? So when we talk about Sagittarius being the anchor and cornerstone of this, we're saying all of this stuff is happening in other areas of our life in reference to how our perceptions shape our interpretation, right? And how our convictions and intentions inform our interpretations. So we have something shaping and something informing, right? All of it is a reference point, right? So our perception and our intentions and convictions that come from those perceptions are shaping and forming our interpretations. So I'll read that one more time, then I'm gonna keep going. Truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. And just pause for a moment. I feel like I'm living out my miscalling as a preacher here. So just roll with me. I feel like I got my text here and I'm giving my sermon. So it's just a dream of mine. Anyways, truth is radical honesty, articulated intelligibly and understood intuitively. And because it's mutable, it can change. And that is okay. I know culturally a lot of things around religious dogma is that truth is immutable. And we have these truths that come from cultural reference points that are so incongruent and in conflict with our present experience that we don't know how to reconcile it. And it's because we probably really shouldn't. Or maybe we need to think more critically about how we do that. All right? Each phase of mutable madness provides us a piece necessary to reveal that truth. That truth is your intentional why. Now I'm going to throw a little something else in here. But let me go back to this. Truth is radical honesty, articulated intelligibly, and understood intuitively. I just pulled together all the mutable signs there. Radical honesty, right? That Gemini, and that's right here. That Gemini Sagittarius intersection. We have honesty here. Articulated intelligibly, right? And understood intuitively. So that brings us over here between Pisces, Sagittarius, and Virgo. In order to get to your intentional why, you must uncover your unintentional why. This is the importance of the Pisces phase of mutable madness. And again, the Pisces phase began February 4th with Mercury in Pisces. It was already in the heart of its retrograde shadow, and it ends May 10th with Venus in Pisces. So we can really say that the Pisces phase begins with conversation and ends with reconciliation. Isn't that great? That's kind of cool, right? Beginning with Mercury. Thank you, David. It is. And Nadia, like, it's so important for you, though, just because of how much you've shifted cultural reference points over the course of your life. I feel like you are like a case study for mutable madness. Like, yeah, that's a whole other conversation, Nadia. Anyway, um, what keeps you from living in alignment with your intentions? This is a question that we're seeking answers to, and that we get answers to um, during this mutable madness thing, and really during Pisces. And I wrote this down somewhere. I wrote this down somewhere. Where did I write it? Hold on, let me find it because I answered that question. Um, I think we were talking about lack of awareness and knowledge of your intentions is what keeps you in a line, because this is important. Sagittarius is a fire sign. Fire means conscience. It means your will, right? Leo is the authority of your will because I said so, the entitlement to have an impact on the world around you. And remember, if you know anything about the schematics of triplicities, right, you know that the sun and Jupiter rule all fire signs. So conscious awareness and the entitlement to have an impact on your world around you is the story of fire signs. And Jupiter is your intention and conviction, right? But again, this is conscious intention, and this is the action of the will, what motivates, what moves you, right, to act. And so you can have a conscious intention, but there's always something unconscious motivating you. And this is what's so important when we think about balancing the masculine and the feminine, and when we think about feminism, and when we think about sidereal astrology as a kick in the gut to patriarchy, saying that the sun is actually not the most important thing. And Pisces highlights this for us during this phase of mutable madness because it is a water sign. Fire and water are enemies. And it says no matter how strongly you believe what you believe, you cannot override your biology. I'm going to say that again. No matter how long, no matter how, I'm sorry, I'm reading questions. No matter how strongly you believe what you believe, you cannot override your biology. Let me pause. Begins with a conversation and ends with reconciliation. Oh, y'all answered that. So, again, Pisces is water. It's your biology, right? The origins of your body, the actual mechanisms or the physiological way that your biology functions, how and why. Um, I'm going to read a little something here. For the Pisces fades, it's understanding how the unseen and unknown inform the seen and known. You cannot classify and organize your way to the truth, and there's only so much relevant information. After a while, it's hard to know what's important and what's relevant, right? So, the way that I've been thinking about this is that culturally, we need to fund another study. We need access to books, literacy, right? Information, 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 information. But wisdom is the right application of information and knowledge at the right time. And so you can make spreadsheets and you can go to the library and you can take courses and get 50 gazillion degrees. You can be a doctor, right? Look at Ben Carson. This man was cutting people's skulls open. And do you hear the things that he says now? It's kind of like, obviously, scientific and mechanistic genius does not equate to wisdom. I'm going to say that again. Scientific and mechanistic genius does not equate to wisdom. Wisdom really then becomes like this thing that's very hard to define. And I did talk about it yesterday. I'm not going to do too much more with that. What intentions are stored in your body that challenge your capacity to consciously act in alignment with your convictions? I'm going to read that question again. What intentions are stored in your body that challenge your capacity to consciously act in alignment with your convictions? This is the crux of Pisces and Sagittarius. That you say you believe this thing. What informs that? What informs that belief? What informs that conviction? But why are you not doing it? Is it because your will is weak? Because you didn't read the right book? Because you didn't get enough information? Maybe your method is wrong? I don't really think that that's it. Um, what you say you believe and what your body has stored as a consequence of experience tell two different stories about the reason for your doing and being. And because Pisces and Sagittarius are square, we really are reconciling those two things. Spirit always sends me the information that is relevant to the astrology at hand when I need it. And one of the things that has come across my path is this concept of implicit memory. And so I want to read just a little bit of what I've written here. Pisces is not verbal, it's physiological. Let that marinate. Even to give a name to a feeling or sensation, right, is to interpret it. To name something is to interpret it. To name a feeling is to interpret it. You cannot name without interpreting. And interpreting is shaping perceptions. So you cannot say, I feel sad, without having interpreted your body. You cannot say that I feel sad without having made a correlation between, right, and a correspondence between what you feel and the language that you have for something. And this reminds me that there are some words that I forgot that I wanted to add here. So let me just write them down so I don't forget. So Pisces is difficult to understand because how do we articulate that we are feeling something without words? Can we ever access the pure experience? I feel like we have a lot of rituals or have had in the past culturally these rituals that allow us to do that, right? Like if you've grown up in a Pentecostal church, catching the Holy Ghost, right? There is something about accessing something without words. And I've legit been caught up one time in my life, I know for sure that I don't want to say I lost consciousness, but I definitely felt something take over me and my body. And when, like, I almost bust my head because I really did almost, I was like in and out of conscious awareness. But all of that to say, not only is language, right, when we say I feel this thing, we're interpreting our body, but an action is an interpretation as well. That's deep. Like when I was sitting writing these notes, I was like, wow, God, that's real deep. Goddess, you mean that when I take an action, even that action is an approximation for my intention? Wow. Action is an approximation for intention. Language is an approximation for belief. Everything is a correspondence. How do you access the will without an intermediary? How do you access the will without an intermediary? You really don't. Right? There's some kind of interpretation of finding a corresponding action for the intention, right? For this unnameable, undefinable, indescribable thing that impels us, that kind of takes over our body and makes us want to do something, right? And so the intention is I want to put out the fire. Am I going to grab the hose and spray it? Am I going to go to the bathroom and get a bucket, right? All of those actions are approximations for your intention. So it means we have a lot of issues here. Do you even know what your intention is? Your body, your physiology, your biology, your family, your home, your upbringing. Your mom taught you how to interpret your body by saying, oh, you're sleepy. Oh, baby is hungry, or ignoring you, or letting you cry it out, or saying that your cries could not be answered at this moment, right? Your mom taught you that. And those are implicit memories stored in your body, right? And it's only when we perceive that the outcome has not been reached that we might consider there being a conflict between our implicit memory, right, our unintentional why, and our intentional why. This is the point of Pisces, and this is why this particular phase is really, really, really hard, right? Jupiter's been in Scorpio up until today, and so there's been this kind of triggering of things stored in your body, and they come up and they're making you do things. And you're like, I know I want to do this one thing. Why do I keep doing this thing? Okay? Let me pull up my notes here to see how far I've gotten off track. How do you reconcile the story of your body and biology with that of your will and consciousness? Understand that you are rewriting your story. The facts of your life reveal something to you. All right? So I'm going to go back to that thing I said before. Truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. So if we hinge on this word interpretation, we can say that when we put feeling to word or word to feeling, we are interpreting our body. This is mutable madness. When we take an action, we are interpreting our intention and our will, right? So an action is an interpretation of intention. And then I say truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. So truth is an interpretation of the facts. Again, because mutable signs are inherently changeable, all of these things can change. That is the salvation of this year, that it can change. And it's okay for it to change. And that's hopeful, right? Now, I'm going to pause there in the notes. And do you guys have any questions? I'm going to try to catch up and make sure that I've said everything while you guys get a moment to answer some questions here. If you have any questions, now is a good time to ask. After this, I want to start talking about Jupiter. Yeah, I want to start talking about Jupiter. Nervous? Don't be nervous. You guys have already made it through a really hard part of this Pisces phase, which was Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And Mercury's going to go back into Pisces, but it's moving forward. So remember that backwards movement is always revisiting. And when we revisit stuff, it's not always happy. Sometimes it's nerve-wracking. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's triggering. And it has been triggering for us. That these things that come up, we don't know why we're responding or reacting a certain way. Right? And so mutable madness gives us the opportunity to reinterpret something. You are not fragile, babies. Y'all have made it. Being on the precipice of change means that the familiar feels so far away, but you didn't want it anyway. You didn't like it anyway. But again, you've made it through this Mercury and Pisces part. And so the retrograde part. So moving forward is about resolution. And the resolution is much easier than the revisiting. Can I define unconscious intention again? I absolutely can. Let me just find it in my notes. So I made, this term I did not come up with, so if you want more on it, just Google it. It's called implicit memory. And unconscious intention is implicit memory. Implicit memory means that there is evidence around you for something having happened. There is evidence in the way that your body responds to someone saying something to you. There is evidence in the way that your body responds to specific sounds that something has happened. There's an experience, something is in your body, right? Your neurological system has been shaped by experience, and you may not always be aware of the experience or aware of the impact of that experience. So your unintentional why harkens back to basically saying, my body is telling me that something is not right. And so you have to interpret that, right? You have to find language for that. You have to find word for that, or you've got to move it out. I wouldn't say genetic memory. I would maybe say neurological or cellular memory, in that people think that, at least the latest research tells us that the neurological synapses in our brains are shaped by experience, right? And because of the nature of memory, those neurological connections become like correspondences to certain things, and our bodies can respond in a certain way that triggers, right? So when we say somebody is triggered, if somebody has PTSD because they've been to the war in Iraq and they hear a firework, they are triggered because their body associates that sound with danger, right? So there's a special type of yoga that is practiced for people who have PTSD, and there's a trauma-informed yoga that understands that certain positions can be triggering for people, right? Because there is this implicit memory, this unintentional, why when this person does this, my body does this and I get this response. I'm going to give you a personal, right? A personal experience. I have discovered that I really do have abandonment issues, and that I tend to interpret in my relationships every little thing that somebody does is that they're going to abandon me. And so my body's like, oh, well, it's over now, right? Yes, the body remembers. That's the book. Okay, I have one question about the sixth house, because that's where Sagittarius is for me. Is that strictly about your job? Is health also something to look at? I'm going to direct you here. The sixth house says job duties, job title, co-workers, employees, your personal obligations, illness, healthcare and hygiene, and then your intestines. Okay, that should answer your question. All right, let's talk about Jupiter in Scorpio versus Jupiter in Sag. I'm making good time here because I got to go pick up my son at like 2:30. So let's see if we can make it. Okay. This is so much fun. I have some more notes here. And let me just find where I've written this. Before I go into that, let me just say this about the other phases of mutable madness. While I was driving the other day, I was thinking about some words for Virgo and Gemini. I'm not a linguist, but I love words and I love language. And so the words that I came up with for these two favors are lexicon and grammar, right? So lexicon is like the vocabulary or words that are relevant to any particular subject or language. But grammar is not only the rules for how they're put together, but also the way that they're actually used. So a good example of that is the word literal, right? Literal means something actually is as it seems, right? Face value. But we often use literal in a hyperbolic manner. I literally just broke off all 5 of my toes, right? Now, the dictionary definition of literal means something as it has actually happened or been observed. But the way we use it, the actual use of the word literal, oh my God, I literally just broke off all 5 of my toes when I stubbed it. Like, no, you actually did not, right? So the actual use of the word is in conflict with the dictionary definition of the word. And this is kind of the tension between Virgo and Gemini, that you can say a word, but the way that another person understands a word. Thank you, Nadia. So that if I learn English, right, in a British context, and then I come to America to speak English and I've never heard American English, then that might confuse me. I would be like, oh my God, you literally, and this is just an example, not to say that British people don't know what literally means. This is just an example. Look down at your toes and see if you actually broke off 4 of them. So this presents its own kind of thing, and we won't really experience this square this year, unless of course you have Virgo in your birth chart, which I'm looking at all of y'all folks here that have come today. Lots of you all do. Okay. And we won't necessarily experience, well, we will have a quarter moon in Virgo, and we will have a quarter moon in Pisces during Virgo season, and we've already had a full moon in Virgo here. So that's not necessarily true, but whatever, you get my point. What did I want to say here? So, right, Gemini is lexicon. Write those words down, look them up. And Virgo is grammar or syntax, the logic of how something works and is put together. Syntax has you saying, how do these words need to be ordered in order to be intelligible, to make sense, for the code to function, as it were. So we have each of these in reference point to Sagittarius. We've talked about how Pisces functions during mutable madness in reference to Sagittarius. Gemini is the next phase. And this is where we really get to the crux of this whole redefining truth. Because this is almost an internal process here, right? Biology is very personal, and you can't ever experience somebody else's biology. You know, you can never really get inside somebody else's body and have their experiences and the neurological connections in their body that have grown as a consequence of those experiences. But the honesty part, when I looked at this, I kept hearing people say, but I was honest. I told the truth. It's like, yeah, remember, your truth is not the sequential order of facts. That's your interpretation based on your perception. And as we'll come to find out and understand, while Jupiter is transiting Sagittarius, how do your intentions and convictions inform how you understand your life experiences and the world around you? Which basically means, truth means you are interpreting your experiences and the information that you encounter in a particular way for a particular reason, right? So when we see Pisces square Sagittarius in this current phase, we can go back and look at experiences that we've had and reinterpret them because we have a different perspective and perception now. When we get to Gemini, we can have conversations that we've had before, and we can come across information that we've come across before and have a different interpretation now because our perspective has changed. When we get to Virgo, we can reinterpret the data because our perspective has changed. When we understand the conviction that we're committed to, then we can have conversations about how those convictions shape how we interpret. How do we, for Sagittarius rising, this is how does this interpret your relationships with people? How do your intentions and convictions shape how you interpret your relationships with people? I mean, you can believe that somebody is doing something for this particular reason, and it's like, but why are you committed to interpreting their actions that way? Now, of course, people remember actions are an approximation for intention. What being like so souped up in this mutable madness thing has revealed to me is that, number one, thank God for Pisces, because miscommunication is inevitable. I mean, I can have my intentions for acting a certain way, and I might not even be conscious of what's really making me feel this way or act this way. But I've done my best to interpret my intentions and translate them into action. But then I'm doing something that involves you. And so now you have to interpret my actions, right? And how you interpret my actions is going to be rooted in your own intentions and convictions. How do we ever understand each other? Like, how? How do we ever understand each other? Right? I think Gemini and Virgo have a lot to do with that just because the consensus, right? Remember, I'm always saying language is the consensus. And so when we can find the words that other people can understand, we can be intelligible. And when we're willing to be honest, we can definitely find a way to articulate and interpret our intentions into actions and into words that other people can understand. But the Pisces is really what allows us to pull it all together. So let's talk about Jupiter now. Let us talk about Jupiter in Scorpio. Jupiter entered Scorpio on October 10th, I believe, 2018. And Scorpio is the survival instinct. Here's another water sign, biology. If you take nothing away from this today, fire signs are conscious. They're what you are aware of. It is what you can perceive consciously. But water is unconscious. It's your physical body. It is what is inside your body. It is your experiences. Okay? So when we talk about Scorpio and we talk about the survival instinct, this is not conscious. This is not something that we are intentionally doing. Sagittarius is the intentional sign, right? Scorpio it's primal. The survival instinct depending on our birth charts, depending on where our Mars is, can tell us how we deal with that, right? Is our survival instinct something that we negotiate with, that we rationalize? Hi, my name is Dana, and I have Mars in Libra, and I rationalize and negotiate with my survival instinct. Do we have Mars in Aries, right? Do we do what we do because we can? There's no negotiating with your survival instinct when you have Mars in Aries, right? So Scorpio is not about sex. The only reason we're talking about sex is because of the crimes associated with sex, and because of the culture that we live in. There are a lot of sexual crimes, right? But Scorpio is the survival instinct, and the survival instinct is a physiological kind of organ system almost, right? Of responses our body has that we have inherited genetically, but have also been shaped by our experiences. So Jupiter in Scorpio asks us to interpret our experiences through the lens of our survival instinct. Climate change is a survival issue, right? When Jupiter was in Virgo, we deal with, when Jupiter was in Virgo, we're dealing with the data. What does the science say? And remember, you can interpret data any way you want. And even the questions asked to get a set of data is rooted in a conviction and bias. Going and collecting data is an action, right? And remember, action is always an approximation for intention. So we always come back to the same thing. Why are you doing that? Why are you asking that question? Why are you responding this way? Why are you triggered? Why? What is the conviction? What is the intention? What is the intentional why? What is the unintentional why? So this Scorpio during the Pisces phase of mutable madness, it's like, wow, that really triggered you. Why? Wow, that really upset you. Why? Wow, that's really got you feeling some kind of way. Why? Right? We're unsatisfied with just accepting at face value that we're having this certain feeling because the discomfort is too much to continue on this way. Saturn is like, oh no, you're going to make your life a living testimony of your intentions and convictions, and I'm going to show you everything in the way of that. Right? If we go back to the last time that Jupiter was in Sagittarius while Saturn was in Sagittarius, we are going back to the peak of the civil rights movement. Let me just see if I can pull up my chart. I know I'm not going to be able to get y'all to see it, but I think the year is 1959, 60 years ago. 1959, let's see, maybe it was 1950, 1960? Wow. 1960, 1961. Woo! That was the last time Jupiter was in Sagittarius. Is that right? Yeah, that was the last time Jupiter was in Sagittarius while Saturn was in Sagittarius. Man, do you know what was going on then? Do you know what was going on then in America? What was going on in Africa during the beginning of the 1960s? What was going on in the Soviet Union? What was going on in Europe? What was going on in Central America? Jupiter in Sagittarius and Saturn in Sagittarius. Man, if you don't know history, you should really do some research. Paige said, Scorpio rising, and yes, my body holds on to emotions I don't even realize I haven't let go of. Yes, because your survival has depended upon remembering that this person is not safe. How are you going to talk yourself out of saying that this person is safe? How are you going to convince yourself this person is safe? I said this before and I'm going to repeat it. Let me see if I can get the words right, how I said it. It does not matter how strongly you believe something. Conviction is no match for biology. No matter how strongly you believe something, intention and conviction is no match for biology. Okay, so Scorpio, Jupiter has been all about the survival instinct, and I'm so glad that we're getting a break. We all need a break. The Pisces, the Pisces Scorpio trine ongoing between, what was that, December Mars entered Pisces. Up until this present moment, there's been both of those houses occupied. Good, googly, muggly. Woo! Man, I don't know what your other favorite astrologers say, but that trine is relentless. It is like a deluge. It is like your body is loud, and I dare you to try to say something to it, right? So, one of the things to take from that, though, is that Scorpio really does not ask why. This whole idea that Scorpio is manipulative, this idea that Scorpio is trying to control you, no. Scorpio is your survival instinct. Scorpio is too busy trying to save its own life, trying to preserve its own body at any means necessary. Okay? So now Sagittarius asks why. Remember, adjacent signs are the most different. And I know I wrote this down somewhere. Where did I write this down, y'all? I wrote something about Scorpio and Sagittarius, or maybe I just said it in my brain. Oh, did I put a note in my phone? I might have put a note in my phone. Let me see. I don't think so. Nope, I didn't. Okay. This is the question. That's a deep question. Let me come back to that. I'm not ready. Let me come back to that. So, Sagittarius and Jupiter are adjacent signs, which means they are different. In essence, we're talking about Mars, nocturnal Mars, which is water, and Jupiter, which is diurnal Jupiter. So, whenever we're talking nocturnal versus diurnal, we're talking about unconscious versus conscious, right? Because light makes you aware, darkness makes you unaware. You cannot see what it is when it is dark, so you cannot see your survival instinct, right? But you can see intention through the actions that are an approximation for those intentions. I'm just going to read this, and I'm not even going to say too much. I'm just going to read this. Where does the narrative that informs your sense of self originate? Right? Can you write a story, a myth about how you have become who you are? What are the major events and circumstances that have shaped you? Who is the antagonist? What is the primary goal of the hero? You. This is your origin story. So remember, truth is not a sequential, when I say truth is not the facts of your story told in sequential order. Truth is your interpretation of those facts. So Jupiter in Sagittarius always asks us to reinterpret our own intentions and reinterpret the facts to tell a different story. Now, I have some dates here that you might find very, very, very interesting. I'm going to give you the dates here of Jupiter's transits through the mutable signs since the last time that Jupiter entered Sagittarius. I did a thread on this a long time ago. It might have been last year or the year before that. But I showed how you can track your Jupiter story or any particular Jupiter story rather, by going back and doing the quarter points. So this is what I do in a Saturn return reading. We go back to birth and say Saturn is here in this house and this sign in your birth chart making these aspects, and now let's go to Saturn square your natal Saturn. Then let's go to Saturn opposite your natal Saturn. Let's go to Saturn final square your natal Saturn and back to the conjunction at the return. So you can do that for any particular transit, right? So if we wanted to know what does Jupiter in Sagittarius kind of mean for you in your life, we would go, let's go back to the last time Jupiter was in Sagittarius. That was November 21st, 2007 through December 9th, 2008, right? So I'm going to tell you, at that time, I have not been in a lot of intimate relationships, like long-term monogamous relationships, just my life for whatever reason. But at that time, I entered a pretty important relationship in my 20s. I met this person August of 2007, so Jupiter was still in Scorpio. And as a matter of fact, I started my intentional study of astrology in August of 2007, so that by the time Jupiter entered Sagittarius, I was deep in it. But see, what ended up happening was that the guy that I was dating and that I ended up in a relationship with at the time, we had like a similar upbringing and childhood friends. And uh, uh, that New Year's Eve, we ended up at a church of a mutual friend. And for the entirety of Jupiter's transit through Sagittarius, we played at that church. He played drums and I was in the keys and directing choir at that church. And I used to get into it with this pastor. I have this story up on my Twitter page somewhere. But this pastor used to call me a wild horse and be like, "You are so smart and you have so much potential, but you just need to be tamed." Gross. Oh my God, because I remember I was so into astrology. I was trying to read the charts of all of my friends at the church, and they would go tell the pastor on me. And so the pastor would call me into, this is all during this Jupiter and Sagittarius transit. He would call me in his office, having printed up all this stuff off the internet, trying to have a debate with me about astrology. And I was just like, boo, no, you're not going to try me. But that began me reconciling my own convictions with astrology, to the point that like Saturn and Jupiter is back in Sagittarius 12 years later, and look at me, like I literally started studying astrology again. So the next important point in this story is Jupiter in Pisces, which is May 2nd 2010. Yeah, exactly, Paige. May 2nd 2010, October 31st 2010. So Jupiter was in Pisces then. It dipped into, I guess it went back into Aquarius for a brief time, and then Jupiter in Pisces, December 6, 2010 through May 8th, 2011. That's really interesting because for me personally, it was during September of 2010 that I started my very first astrology blog and practice called Electric Mind Astrology. And yeah, that was Jupiter and Pisces. So again, you're pulling together. Now, if you're, the houses may be helpful here, maybe not. We'll see. Uh, the Gemini phase of this Jupiter transit would have been May 30th, 2013 until June 18, 2014. Oh man, I forgot something else that happened during that Jupiter and Sagittarius transit. Yeah, I think I met my biological father for the first time during that transit. Wow. Um, the Go back really quick. That Pisces period of May 2nd, 2010 to October 31st, 2010, and December 6th, 2010 through May 8th, 2011, that whole time period was the last time that we had eclipses. Um, is that right? Yeah, I think that was the last time we had eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius. So that may be the Jupiter and Pisces dates, May 2nd, 2010 until October 31st, 2010, and December 6th, 2010 through May 8th, 2011. That was the last time that Jupiter was in Pisces, okay? Gemini was very recent, May 30th, 2013 through June 18th, 2014. That was Gemini and Pisces. Um, that's actually when I discovered the sidereal zodiac. It was right in between those dates. Um, May 30th, 2013 until June 8th, 2014 is Jupiter in Gemini. And then Jupiter in Virgo was very recent, August 11th, 2016 and September 11th, 2017. Jupiter was in Virgo August 11th, 2016 through September 11th, 2017. Um, I'm trying to think if I want to add another piece here. I probably don't because I don't want to complicate things. So we're just going to leave it there. These are the Jupiter story. This is a Jupiter story that would have began 2007 for you. right? This would have began 2007, this particular Jupiter story that is coming to a completion this year. So what was going on November 21st, 2007 through December 9th, 2008? Excuse me, what was going on for you then? Hmm? What began? Now, the questions have to do, and I pulled up, where is it? I pulled up my 2019 Sidereal Astrology Guide, because here in April, this summary has us putting together our Mutable Madness story. So I'm just going to read these questions. This is available for download in my store, and I do still have printed and bound copies of this. So if you didn't get yours, you can still buy it. It's in my store, shop.thepeoplesoracle.com. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and read this whole summary because it's really relevant to these Jupiter transits and the stories that kind of goes with these transits. Okay, welcome to Mutable Madness Spring. Oh, welcome to Mutable Madness. Spring 2018 offered a short prelude to 2019, and that was because in March, so mid-March 2018, so this had to be like March 13th or 14th. From that point, for like at least that particular day, there was a new moon in Pisces. So Sun and Moon were in Pisces, Venus and Mercury were in Pisces, and Mars and Saturn were in Sagittarius. So we had every planet in the sky was in a Jupiter ruled sign except for Jupiter itself. Jupiter was in Libra. So it's a little bit different because Jupiter in Libra kind of points us in a different direction. So I said that spring 2018 offered a short prelude to 2019, and that was in the midst of cardinal convergence. So you might want to pay attention to that particular time in your life. What was going on? The mutable signs are Gemini, provides words to speak the mind. Virgo calculates mechanical processes and solves functional problems based on physical evidence. Sagittarius acts with meaningful intention and personal conviction. Pisces experiences meaning beyond the personal and the tangible. Mercury and Jupiter tell the story of the mutable signs. It marries the words to their meanings and intention to comprehension. Through Sagittarius and Pisces, Jupiter frames the why. Sagittarius relies on convictions that grow from personal experience. So in this, I've kind of talked about what I just spent the first part of this broadcast talking about, that Sagittarius and Pisces. So Sagittarius relies on convictions that grow from personal experience. It means your conscious interpretation of those experiences. Pisces lives life beyond the limits of its personal experiences in the physical body. So this means that your conscious awareness and remembrances of your experiences may be different than what your actual body remembers. Both believe their experience is the truth. Can it be true? It's time to put together your Mutable Madness story. What are you learning, teaching, writing, speaking, believing in your body, or knowing with your mind? What do you see exactly as it is at face value? What do you know to be true despite what it looks like? That's a hard question. What confidence grows as you understand the intentions behind your convictions? Do you say what you mean? Do you mean what you say? I want to go back to that. What do you know to be true despite what it looks like? That is, how are you interpreting someone else's intentions, either in their words or in their actions, despite what it looks like? That is Pisces. Wrong thing, right? Pisces is a part of discernment and empathy, meaning that it can understand what you said even if you lack intelligibility. It can discern the proper way to interpret even if you did not use the word the right way, right? And it can understand your intention even if your actions, which again are an approximation for intention, were not congruent. If your actions and your intention were kind of in misalignment, but someone understanding the intention behind your, like, that's like what we would sometimes define as compassion. My ability to understand and perceive your intention even if your action didn't match up with that, right? Extending grace and compassion says I understand what you meant and where you're coming from. Even if your action hurt me, I know you did not mean to hurt me, right? This is Pisces. I understand what you said even if you didn't use the right word. I understand what you meant even if you didn't put the words together the right way. And I understand your intention even if your actions weren't the best choice. But this can get us in trouble sometimes, right? As many people with Pisces know that sometimes you need to take people's words at face value and you need to take their actions at face value. Maybe they didn't use their words the right way, but it still hurt you. Maybe their actions did not mean to hurt you, but they did. Right? This one's a little bit tougher. So if they hurt you, you have to think about yourself sometimes, right? And the only way that a person sometimes can even refine their action is by understanding that their action did not have the intended outcome. And if you're always extending empathy, and if you're always extending compassion and understanding, when you're in a relationship, you're kind of doing the other person's job for them. And I understand that is definitely a survival instinct for many Pisces. So anyways, yes, motherhood, understanding preverbal babies. So when we make this switch, Jupiter's not concerned with the survival instinct anymore. It's not unconscious, nocturnal. It's not primal anymore. This is conscious. This is our mind. Remembering that action is an approximation for intention. How are we refining our actions in order to be a more accurate expression of our intention? How are we refining our actions to be a more accurate reflection of our intentions? Remember the question that I asked at the beginning, if I can find it, I think it's right here. What keeps you from living in alignment with your intentions, right? There's the intentional why that Pisces brings up, the implicit memory, right? And Jupiter in Scorpio has made sure that kind of all of these things are coming up into our awareness. All of these things that are stored and programmed in our body that keep us from living in alignment with our own conscious intentions, right? So it's one thing to live in alignment with your conscious intentions, and it's another thing to understand why you even have that intention. And so Jupiter in Sagittarius is really, why do you believe what you believe? I have something here in the December portion, right? And I'm going to read this too. You should really download this or purchase a copy. I'll ship it to you. Just go to my website. This is December 2019, and by this time, once we get to, I think it's December 16th, and we get to that full moon eclipse, the new moon eclipse on the 26th, we have Sun, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Moon, all in Sagittarius. Venus will have already left, and Mars will not have gotten there yet. But I'm going to read this to you. Mutable madness is about shifting your perceptions. Remember I was just saying that? It's so funny. I just love how the consistency of astrology. As you have new experiences, refining your motivations as you gain new language to articulate your truth, and clarifying your core values as you get clear on why you do what you do. Some of our core values are rooted in self-preservation and a survival instinct. And if you natally have Jupiter in Scorpio, absolutely. If you do not have natal Jupiter in Scorpio, Jupiter in Scorpio's transit is helping you understand how your survival instinct has shaped how you've interpreted things, meaning that you understand and perceive it this way because you had to in order to survive. It necessarily was not a conscious choice. Scorpio is nocturnal. It is not conscious. It's biological. Your survival instinct is not something you chose to have. You were born with it. Your ancestors gave it to you. If you are a descendant of enslaved Black people, your survival instinct has the trauma of slavery programmed in it. Let them tell you otherwise. As you make your life a living testimony of what you believe, you are discovering whether you still believe what you once did, and how your life would be different with new convictions. New convictions come from new interpretations. New interpretations come from changing perceptions, things coming up into your awareness that you weren't aware of. becoming aware that things were shaping your perceptions that you did not know. It's like you've had on glasses all of this time and did not know that they were tinted purple. No wonder blue looked that way. No wonder yellow looked that way, right? December, okay, I just want to get to this part. 2019 is. What stories are you ready to abandon in favor of a truer truth? You know you don't have to interpret the facts that way. Why are you interpreting the facts of your life that way? What's a different way that you can interpret them? Right? Rooted in your own intention, though. Not, and sometimes that means that you do extend grace and mercy and understanding that this person did this thing and this is why. Maybe. What intentions are you uncovering as you refine and clarify your core values? What has changed for you since January? So that's from December. I think I went over everything that I wanted to go over. If you have this 2019 eclipse guide and you're watching the Pisces phase of Mutable Madness, I want you to go back here, and if you got colored pins, you could just put a purple star after next to everything Pisces. So you might want to add up here that, ooh, I just realized something. I hope the people at the beginning make it to the end of this video because I just realized something. I told you, I told you that the Pisces phase of Mutable Madness began February 24th, but actually Mars was in Pisces from December 23rd, 2018 until February 5th, 2019. So you need to add that. I need to add that to my thing here. That Mars was in Pisces December 23rd, 2018 until February 5th, 2019. So you need to add that to your Mutable Madness Pisces phase. Ooh, how did I miss that? So anyway, so you can go to the back of this and you would want to mark, you know, May 10th here when Venus enters Aries, right? You want to mark that off as the end of the Pisces phase of Mutable Madness, so that, right, the Sun entered Pisces March 14th, Venus enters Pisces the 15th of April, and Mercury enters Pisces the 11th. So really, once we get to the 11th of April, that is a really important week. Jupiter's going to station retrograde at 0 Sagittarius. So basically, Jupiter is already stationary. It's not leaving 0 Sagittarius. And so that second week of April, if we had like a peak Mutable Madness, that would be it. That would be peak Mutable Madness for the Pisces phase. Because Mercury is in Pisces, Venus is in Pisces. Yeah. And then, yeah, I would just leave that there. Okay, I have a few minutes for questions. If you have any more questions about anything that I've said, I know I've given you guys a lot of information and you'll want to go back and watch this. It'll be, once I've finished and stop the stream, it will process so that it can be up on my YouTube channel and you can watch it. And I'll be sure to share the link across my platforms. But if you have any questions, let me know. Let me know. Yeah, I really don't have anything else to say. I will add that I always have something else to say. I will add that Jupiter and Sagittarius and all of these conversations about religion. You're welcome, Veronica. All of these conversations about religion and what is going on in different religious institutions around the world. This Jupiter in Sagittarius period is going to be very, very, very interesting. And let's not forget who was at the helm of the civil rights movement in the 60s. The two most public figures were deeply religious men. Dr. Martin Luther King was a deeply religious man. Malcolm X was a deeply religious man. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, right? These are organizations at the helm of the civil rights movement. So yeah, I mean these are yeah. Questions? Questions? No questions? I'm just looking here. Breaking Mueller report expected to be released by mid-April. I'm like, the week of April 11th would be really nice. Do you think that the seventh house is that indicative of a person you will marry? That is a really complex topic, and I would say no. I would say that the ruler of the seventh house might be indicative of the person that you will marry. Um, so if you have Gemini there, Mercury in general could define that. Um, you can ask me questions. Uh, the Not everyone is going to get married, cursed runaway. So you first have to see if marriage is in that person's chart. It's not in everybody's chart. Nicole LeMay asks, do these shifts in perspective allow one to overcome biology, or is that always permanent? I think that's different for everyone. Um, I know that this is probably not what you mean, but it's the best example that I have. Um, and this dream I had last night is just totally popping in my mind. Um, it's kind of perplexing me. Anyways, the example that I have is about addiction, right? For whatever reason, some people are predisposed to addiction, and the struggle to maintain sobriety is lifelong. There are moments when it's easier, and there are moments when it's very, very difficult, and people relapse. But they say the first step is really understanding, bringing into your conscious awareness that you are an alcoholic or you are an addict, right? Bringing that into your awareness, right? That is a story about why there is an overconsumption of a substance. Addiction is a story, right? And having that story helps people to understand why they can't stop drinking. And it gives them, right, a way to approach that problem and to solve it. So we can think of this time period as you understanding the story, right, that has programmed your biology. So for me, what has come up, and again, I'm just telling personal stuff because it's helpful, is really understanding. I mean, this is super deep, and yeah, understanding what, not even just being adopted, but what being separated from my biological mother, no matter what the reason was, how has that shaped me and my biology? How has the experience of being adopted shaped my family, shaped my role in my family, my experience of my family's disposition towards me? And how has me adopting them shaped my own self perception? Right? I mean, these are really difficult questions. And I can interpret it a lot of different ways. But once I get clear on what my intention is, what do I want? Right? I want a solid sense of self. I want good boundaries. I want to succeed in my work. I want independence and autonomy. Next question. Do you have any suggestions of your favorite sidereal astrologers? Me. I am my favorite sidereal astrologer. You're not going to find this information anywhere else. No one is talking about astrology the way that I am. No one is writing about astrology the way that I am, because these are things that I have innovated and created. There truly has not been a non-Vedic, a Western reference point for using the sidereal zodiac that does not copy tropical. So I am my favorite sidereal astrologer. I do not know another astrologer who's doing what I'm doing. So with Sagittarius in the 7, would you say that these eclipses are about redefining your truth in regard to your relationships and why you engage with them? That can be the case, Winter, but quite frequently it's that your partner is going through something, right? So we could almost say what's happening with your partner and their father, your partner and their family. Um, Thanks, David. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. But yeah, Winter, I would say that it may not necessarily be about relationships specifically. I would want to see Venus involved for that. The seventh house could be uh, um, uh, that the partner is going through something. If you are single, it can mean litigation. It can mean business partnership. It could be beefing with your best friend. It just depends on the chart. It depends, you know? Um, yeah, it depends on the chart. Any other questions? I do have to go very shortly, but are there any other questions? There's a little delay here between me and you. You're welcome, Rising Phoenix. This was so fun. I really hope that I can come back and do this for Gemini. But I know I do have my Eclipse special reading coming up. That's going to be towards the end of May into June. And I am considering some, well, I am planning to make some pretty big changes. So it's just a matter of how and when. And that will, and I mean in my personal life. So that's going to determine whether or not or when I'll be able to do this for Gemini. So we'll see. It really depends on how old you are, Cursed Runaway. Um, Seventh house could be your best friend. I do have a theory about having the ruler in the first of the seventh house in the first house. Could be kind of problematic for relationships. Um, yeah, but I'll have to think about that some more before I give a solid conclusion. Um, yeah. I'm going to shut off the stream here and I'll continue to ask questions in the chat. Hopefully, it won't make it go away, but let's see here.